Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Think your gold and silver are safe from confiscation? Think again. It's something that most of us that acquire gold and silver coins, and bars and rounds and the like, would think we're relatively safe. And for all intents and purposes, nowadays we are. But there could come a time when that may change. And of course, if you're involved in illegal activity, that could change very quickly and very soon. This is a story that was sent to me by Silver Honda, and it comes to us from KSBW. Thousands of cannabis plants, pounds of gold and silver seized in Boulder Creek. So let's explore this story and talk a little bit more about confiscation of precious metals by your government. In Boulder Creek, California, the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office has dismantled 2 unregulated commercial cannabis operations. Tens of thousands of dollars worth of precious metal was seized during the raids. Now, keep in mind that cannabis is essentially legal for many uses, especially medicinal, in California. Investigators reported that during the first week of May, state and local law enforcement officers executed a search warrant on 8 land parcels on Bear Creek Road in Boulder Creek. The raid found illegally siphoned water from Bear Creek was being used to cultivate cannabis. In total, 1,079 plants were seized. A second search warrant was served on an 80-acre parcel of land in Whalebone Ranch Road, where investigators found more illegal cannabis plants, as well as gold and silver. Investigators seized 1,673 cannabis plants under cultivation inside large, non-permitted greenhouses, 61 pounds of processed cannabis, 50 pounds of recently harvested cannabis plants, 6.9 pounds of processed cannabis concentrate, gold and silver valued at approximately $67,000 and $53,330. And here we can see the gold and silver that was confiscated there. Wow, what a stash there of gold and silver. In addition to the drugs and money, police found a loaded handgun, 1 loaded assault rifle, 1 loaded AK-47, and 1 rifle. Ammo and tactical body armor were found alongside the guns. There you can see the cache of weaponry there. No arrests were made in either search. But look, it's pretty amazing there that this stuff was investigated or, was seized here, were found seized there in Boulder Creek from this operation. And keep in mind that marijuana is legal, at least in part, in California. I guess definitely for medicinal purposes, but there may be, and more likely it's probably not, enforced in terms of its, use or in small amounts. But this is a pretty big operation here. And because of that, they are seizing all of this and all the property involved that's has any value. And obviously gold and silver are one of those things that does have value. And, I think the lesson to be learned here is, you think about it, a situation like this, highly organized, look how clean this is. And because of some laws that were not followed exactly, they came in and swept in and took everything of great value there, gold and silver and the guns. And this is a case really in both these situations. It can apply to precious metals, but also to guns as well, where they can seize, and they have in the past. And by the way, in relation to drug busts in general, this is not atypical. This happens all the time, where there's illegal drugs and they take everything of value. And to me, that's not fair, and it violates your rights. And this is another case here. And that's one thing that's scary when you have, especially a situation where you have legalized drugs, and that's what marijuana is. It is a drug, and you legalize it, but you regulate it. And that is part of what the problem is. And in a sense, it provides another avenue for them to do things like this and to seize property and even that which they may legalize, because they regulate it, and the regulations tied around it are probably very complex. And by all this is probably was more of a blatant case, but nonetheless, it still provides an avenue for which the authorities can come in and take. And in this case, it was county authorities, but it could happen on the state level and obviously the federal level as well. And that brings me to the second part of this. That is an example. It's something we, as folks who accumulate these precious metals, gold and silver especially, we are, by the very nature of our purchases, susceptible to this type of thing. And you may say, well, it's probably not going to happen to me. I don't break the law. But if you think about it, as many laws as there are on the books, the average person probably commits at least misdemeanors and, by some definition, felonies. There's even a book about it. There's so many things that we really don't realize that when we do that could be done. Technically, we may be breaking the law in what we do throughout life. And because of that nature, you can pretty much accuse anybody of breaking any law. And so there's not much wiggle room when it comes to squeezing out of things, at least in terms of being charged with a crime or indictments, because they say you can indict a ham sandwich. Well, because of the nature of our laws, on the federal level, they can be very complex, and I'm sure some state laws can be relatively complex too. Many of them aren't enforced. I mean, there's still laws in the books in some states where spitting on the street is considered illegal. And so the very nature of some of these archaic laws and some of these more complex laws that are very difficult to interpret, they can find any avenue or any excuse to confiscate based off of safety or whatever avenue or whatever law they would so choose. And that is the case with precious metals. We got to be very careful. And so with that pretense of being able to take these metals away from us, what does that lead us? What does that mean? Well, it could potentially mean that it's a temporary possession of these metals until you're cleared of a crime. But it also means the power of the state, the power of government is as such that it should scare us to some degree at some point. And the other factor that involves with this situation, with them being able to take our precious metals, is the fact that it's been done time and time again, and it all harkens back to what most people are screaming or listening to this video. They did it before in 1933. With an executive order by President Roosevelt. But the practicality of that executive order provided an avenue for folks to turn it in. Most of it wasn't enforced as it were during the time. There wasn't many ways to enforce it back then. Nowadays, even though there's a lot more people, it could be enforced really more practically and easier than it was back then. Not to say that they would, and not to say that they could, by the way, either, at least to some level of efficiency, be able to take it away, but they can at least identify those of us who hold precious metals. And I'm going to talk about that on a subsequent video about that. But essentially, they can track our purchases if they really wanted to. Now, they may have to break some constitutional, privacy, the right to privacy, Fourth Amendment, and that type of thing. But it could be done, and it's not like they haven't done it before. NSA, with tracking phone calls and the like. Some people say that is a warrantless wiretapping and the like. There's a lot of things when we skirt the rights that are entrusted to us and by the Constitution. So something we should all be concerned about, holding these precious metals. And with that being said, find a way to be safe with your metals. Hold them in locations. If you can afford to do so, like I do, find places to hold it off-site. and so it's not directly tied to you. Um, be very safe and secure. I would say, even in the case, not necessarily in the case of the feds or law enforcement, as they have to knock on doors, but you never know. Have a security system in place in your home. And by the way, as well as having a security system, be very well armed and be responsible with those arms. But I would strongly advise you to hold a firearm in every single room of the home, loaded and ready to go. But again, you've got to be very safe in doing so. But you need to be able to protect yourself and your metals for sure. And it's something that I strongly advise every member of the community to be well armed, well guarded, and protected. And because it's not just about these metals, but it's about your life. Because they may come for the metals, and if you're home at the time, uh, they think you're gone, well, your life probably won't matter as much to them as getting those metals. But regardless, hold them off site. Have a well a quality security system that can detect movements and the like. And there's plenty of good things out there in that area. For sure. But those are some of the things to think about when you think about confiscation, because confiscation by authorities such as local, state, and federal, those are things to consider, but also confiscation, obviously, from nefarious individuals. You've got to protect yourself in that way, too. But the tracking of purchases, packages that come to your door that may say something like a Provident bearings or something like that, it doesn't take long for someone to recognize that these packages come into your home. They've got some weight to them. They use generic names that may seem off-putting to a potential thief, but really it doesn't take a whole lot for people to figure out. And somebody could have a friend who may have another friend who may have nefarious purchases. As someone who's been a victim, by the way, of crime, of burglary, of having my precious metal stolen in the past, and guns, you got to be very well prepared and take all things into consideration. But the key to this video is that if you think your precious metals can't be confiscated, think again. And this is more about authorities that may come in and take precious metals under the pretense of a potential crime that you may or may not have committed, but also from private individuals as well. I hope this video helped, and take things to heart and to be safe out there. I would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to y'all for watching, and encourage you to please rate, comment, and share, and subscribe.